Here now with reaction, the author of the best-selling book, In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome, and Coulter. And to me, this comes down to a very simple, basic, fundamental choice. The inconvenience of a few guests that want the privilege to be here, the inconvenience, or the gambling with the lives of the American people. Why is that such a hard decision for people?
No, and you're right in your monologue. Why can't we learn from Western Europe? Just a few weeks ago, German intelligence reports that 1,000 German residents have gone to fight with ISIS. Hundreds of them have come back to Germany, and what does Merkel do? She's setting them up with welfare because, you know, if they don't have a lot of welfare, that could radicalize them. Why don't we believe what these migrants say? They come to countries, they rape women. They're having a very difficult time learning not to rape women, even if they're infidel whores and have short skirts. What other immigrant group could not stop itself from raping masses of women? They march around saying, no, you're going to live under Sharia law. They commit terrorist acts. It's right in front of our eyes. And can you imagine? I mean, what Merkel has done is spreading throughout Western Europe. But just in Germany alone, combining German military discipline with Islamic ideology, it's terrifying what we're up against. Why would you do that in this country? And meanwhile, they keep trying to distract us with Russia, Russia, Russia. Russia is probably one of our better allies in the fight against Islam. They've been dealing with these Islamic terrorists for centuries now. And you remember, they're the ones who warned America about the Tsarnaev family that blew up the Boston Marathon. But no, our government officials wouldn't listen. Let's just worry about Russia now that, how long ago did Reagan win the Cold War? It's over. It's
6 months of a conspiracy lie. I mean, it's been nonstop. Here's a really tough question. I know you'll touch it, but so many are afraid to touch it. If you grow up under Sharia and you're a man and you think you have the right to tell women they can't drive, travel, they've got to dress a certain way, they can't be seen in public without a male relative, if you think you can throw gays and lesbians off of big buildings and kill them or hang them, if you persecute Christians and Jews, how do we know? How do you ever vet somebody's mind and heart? If your culture, you grew up, that's what you learned, which directly contradicts our constitutional values. How do we vet that? Is that possible even?
No, you're absolutely right. In addition to the fact that there is no, Syrian FBI, they don't have a computer database, and there was testimony before the Senate last year saying there's nothing to vet. There's nothing we can look at. I also think it's worth mentioning, maybe you've shown these, and if you haven't, you should. I tweeted it out a few weeks ago, photos of women going to college in Afghanistan not that long ago. It was in the 70s. And it looks like an American college campus. They're wearing, skirts and button-down shirts and carrying their book bags. Things can turn overnight when you're bringing in these masses of people from very, very different cultures and make it a hate crime to ask them to assimilate, for the cherry on top. And they have no intent of assimilating. Plus, what are we getting out of this? It's one thing if we're bringing in nuclear scientists or engineers. I don't think we're getting a lot of those. But the vast majority of refugees are just instantly coming in, sucking up welfare that's meant for our people.
Yeah. Let me ask you a political question. One of my favorite clips of the snowflake left is you were on your buddy Bill Maher's show. And it's like June or July of 2015. And you say, yeah, Donald Trump has the best chance of winning. And the crowd just is laughing at you. I don't think they're laughing now. So you've been a very strong supporter. I'm pretty angry with the Republican Party. They seem ill-prepared, especially on repeal and replace. And it seems like the president is trying to clean it up. Hopefully they get there. Hopefully they get consensus. Are you happy with how things are going so far?
On most things, I'm disappointed with the Republican Congress. First of all, they ought to be impeaching those 2 travel ban judges immediately. It is totally outrageous. It is against the Constitution. The president, and by the way, every member of Congress, took an oath to uphold the Constitution. The commander-in-chief has authority over immigration. He has full authority not only through the Constitution and his duties as commander-in-chief, but through a federal law passed by Congress that's been on the books and reaffirmed in hundreds of Supreme Court cases, or rather court cases, at least a dozen Supreme Court cases. This is 100% the prerogative of the commander-in-chief. And to have a district court judge stepping in and saying, oh, no, the commander-in-chief doesn't have that duty. What else could a district court just say, oh, no, we're overruling your decision to go to war because, you know, someone in Hawaii could be affected. This is what we need Congress doing. I was hoping for a better repeal of Obamacare. Sean, they've had 7 years to work on it, and no one in Washington seems to understand the free market.
Yeah, they've had 8 years.
Hold, you know, I'll hold our Emperor God Trump harmless on Obamacare. That really isn't his job. He's supposed to be building the wall, deporting illegals, imposing the refugee ban. But with looking at the massive resistance a pro-American president we finally have, looking at the resistance he's getting, he could use an assist from Republicans in Congress, and other than a handful of them, he's not getting it.
All right. And Coulter, I owe you an email, by the way, and I'll get that to you right away. Thank you, as always. Appreciate you being with us.
President Trump's indecision so far over whether to rescind DACA has Democratic leaders in a tailspin. Perhaps none have gone so far as the DNC deputy chairman, Keith Ellison, who made this comparison to Jews in Nazi Germany. Watch.
I'm one of the people who believes we should give our neighbors sanctuary. And if you ask yourself, what would I do if I was a Gentile in 1941 if my Jewish neighbors were under attack by the Nazis? Would I give them sanctuary? You might be about to find out what you would do. Will you pass that moral test, or will you fail it?
So Ellison is not only comparing immigrants who have broken laws in the United States to Jews facing persecution during the Holocaust. He's seemingly comparing U.S. law enforcement to Nazi brown shirts. Joining me with his reaction is Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire. Ben, good to see you again tonight. Welcome back to the program.
No, thanks.
So what do you think?
Well, I mean, there are about 1 bajillion things wrong with everything that he just said. First of all, Keith Ellison is the last person who should be making Holocaust references, considering that he spent the last 30 years of his life opposing Jews. I mean, he was very close with Nation of Islam founder Louis Farrakhan in the 1990s. He gave a leadoff speech for a guy named Khalid Mohammed, who is so radical that he was thrown out of the Nation of Islam for anti-Semitism. He's tried to back off of that in recent years, but Alan Dershowitz said that if Keith Ellison had been appointed head of the DNC, he would have left the Democratic Party wholesale. Keith Ellison is not the guy to be making this particular reference to begin. If Keith Ellison had been around in 1941, I have my doubts about what he would have done with Jews trying to hide from Nazis. But beyond that, the reference with regard to ICE, that ICE is somehow a Nazi force in enforcing the immigration laws, is just absurd. And the idea that people who are here illegally, who have been living in the country in largely freedom, many of their kids are going to public schools, they're taking advantage of public benefits, they have jobs here. The idea that this is the same thing as making legal citizens of your country illegal and then throwing them into concentration camps or gassing them is just beyond the pale. It's insane language from Ellison, but nothing shocking considering who Ellison is.
I mean, unfortunately, it's become all too convenient in this debate to sort of go directly to the Nazi argument. You know, the idea that, you know, anyone who's conservative is sort of somewhere on that spectrum that is espoused by some people and appears to be used as sort of a tangential argument here by Keith Ellison, really puts us in a place, you know, that goes back to what we were talking about in the last segment, where everything is so fired up, so emotional, that we have little opportunity to actually have a good, solid exchange of ideas that doesn't go to that place.
Yeah, I mean, on the internet, it's called Godwin's Law, the idea that the first person to invoke the Nazis loses the argument. Yeah. And in this particular case, I think this is a pretty good example of it. I mean, Keith Ellison could make a decent argument in favor of DACA. I think he would have to make a stronger argument against President Trump, who apparently wants to re-enshrine DACA with the help of Congress. Yeah. But again, comparing our law enforcement officers at ICE to Nazis is about the most insulting thing that I've heard since, like, the senator from Illinois, Dick Durbin, did the same thing with regard to our soldiers a few years back. So it seems like certain Democrats from the Midwest sometimes have problems with these sorts of linguistic analogs.
Ben Shapiro, thank you very much, Ben. Always good to see you.